This Sunday, our readings are all about being called to follow God and to follow Christ in discipleship. We will begin the first reading from Isaiah, those very familiar words where Isaiah says that it was in the year that King Uzziah died that I saw the Lord sitting on the throne, and the cherubim and the seraphim floating around, and the temple was filled with smoke, and it all culminates with that powerful call where the voice of God says, "Who should I send?" And Isaiah says, "Here am I, send me." And that's answered in the gospel by Jesus calling the fishermen, including Peter. And Peter sees the magnificence of Jesus when Jesus has them catching all this fish that they were unable to do throughout the night. And he swims to shore and worships Jesus. And Jesus says, "Put down your nets. From now on, you will fish for men." So our whole service will be about being called into sharing God's love with the world. It's significant, as a little bit of trivia, certainly in the Roman Catholic tradition and even in the Episcopal tradition, the Anglican tradition, sometimes people will refer to our service as the Mass. And like I say, it's a little bit of trivia. That word, Mass, actually is a little bit of a mispronunciation of Misa. And of course, we think of like the Hispanic tradition calling it the Santa Misa, the Holy Mass. That is from the final words of the service, when the priest would say, "Ita missa est," it is finished, go now and serve the Lord. So the whole word that we use to refer to our service is really wrapped up in the idea of being sent out to share God's love with the world. Of course, you can't really read those words from Isaiah without starting off with the beautiful and beloved Victorian hymn, "Holy, Holy, Holy." That text by Reginald Heber is a very unusual text because of the meter, the amount of syllables that are in each line. It's a very unusual meter. There are not really very many texts with that meter in our hymnal. And of course, there aren't many tunes that will have the right number of notes for those syllables. So this tune that we're very familiar with, Nicaea, was written by John Dykes, who was the organist and precentor at Durham Cathedral during the Victorian era. And it's interesting that he starts off with a triad. Of course, we know in tonal music that major chord is sort of the basis of all of our harmony. And he starts off outlining that chord as if to signify the Trinity right from the very beginning. And he named the tune Nicaea after the Council of Nicaea, where we get the Nicene Creed. So all of that is kind of wrapped up in the idea of Trinity and being in the presence of God. At the communion, the choir will all be singing hymn 706, "In your mercy, Lord, you called me, taught my sin-filled heart and mind, else this world had still enthralled me, and to glory kept me blind." And in later verses, it talks about that it was not I that chose you, but that you, God, chose me. Again, that idea of being called and sent out and chosen by God. And this text, which is new, even though it's a text from the very early 19th century, it's not a text that was really used in hymnals until the 1982 hymnal. So it's not a real common text, but it's a beautiful text, and it's set with a really beautiful Baroque tune by the English composer William Boyce. And then at the very end of the service, for the past several weeks, I've been kind of giving a little bit of a plug for preludes and postludes. At the very end of the service, the postlude will have another way to really think about being called and to follow that call. It's an organ piece by Charles Villiers Stanford, but it uses the tune that we have in our hymnal at 703, just a few numbers before the communion hymn. And we really invite you to, if you want to listen to the postlude, we really invite you to open up your hymnal to hymn 703 and to read these words, "Lead us, O Father, in the paths of peace." Again, this idea of being sent, being called to share God's love. And you'll not ever hear the melody completely through, but you'll hear snippets of this melody by the Renaissance composer Orlando Gibbons. So again, we really hope that you'll stick around for the postlude before you are sent out on your call to share God's love with the world around you.